Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome to the Unexplored Mojave. Since I started this series, I've developed a kind of obsession with the outside of the map. Of course, it's not supposed to be accessed by the player character, but given Fallout's rush development, it's pretty easy to leave the map. I've already covered the outside area in a few videos. And if you're interested in horror or just kind of liminal spaces, I highly encourage that you go out and explore the exterior of the map. It is haunting, it is interesting, and it is kind of fun. But, it might be a little bit boring, especially if you're on console, so if you're on PC, it's probably for the best. However, during the course of this video, I did use console to explore, and it was a very unique experience. For today's video, we're going to be starting near Morningstar Cave. Now, this location is in the southwestern part of the map, and you're going to find a lot of Night Stalkers here the first time you come here. The reason we're here is because this is the easiest place to leave the map. Simply jump on that little ledge back there and go on this little platform, follow along the cliff, jump up there. There might be some invisible walls, but you can easily jump around them, and then we are out of the map. So I made this little map, and I made it a lot bigger so we can actually mark some of the locations that are outside of the actual map. Now, there is the exit from Morningstar Cave. However, I accidentally put it at the wrong place. It should be over about 2 clicks to the west, but hey, it's almost accurate. But with that, we can now embark on our great journey across, the outside of the Mojave Wasteland. Now, you can get a very amazing view of Crescent Canyon as you begin your journey. You can really see why it is called Crescent Canyon. And this canyon or valley continues on for a really long time. You can kind of just see this flat land in between all of these mountains as we begin to leave the Mojave. So I decided to dub this valley Crescent Valley, obviously after Crescent Canyon, which is where the valley begins. So we will look at it later in a map. But for now, I actually want to make my way over towards the Mojave Outpost, where our good friend Dr. Bosch began his journey. However, there is no real glitch here at the Mojave Outpost to leave the map, but either way, we can come over here and we can find the southern end of the I-15, Interstate 15. And there's obviously long 15 here, but since we did the map exit glitch, there is no long 15. As we make our way to the Mojave Outpost, we can find these destroyed, decrepit buildings that obviously normally we only see from inside the outpost, and then we can approach the outpost itself, but obviously we cannot get in. Interestingly enough, something I discovered is at the gate here on the road, there's some text that pops up in a very specific area that says open gate and requires a key. However, if you try to interact with it, obviously nothing happened. It just says this lock cannot be picked. It requires a key to open. Don't know what that key does or what the lock would open, but maybe it just opens Dr. Bosch's world. Anyways, I added it to the map, the Mojave Outpost Ruins. After that, I made my way south, kind of back towards Crescent Valley. And around in this area is where Dr. Bosch found that house, and that is where things really started to turn creepy in his AGR. And then off in the distance, we could see a really weird rock formation, but yeah, that's all it is. There's all kinds of weird rock formations and mountains out here. As you can see, we are really far south. So around this area is where that Dr. Bosch house was, and where Crescent Valley is. As you can see, it is marked here on the map. Unfortunately, Crescent Valley is a little bit too far to the east. It should be more towards the west, but hey, you get the basic idea. Bosch house is correct, though, on that map. So, around this area. After that, I decided to go ahead and make my way to the southern edge of the map, mainly because I'd never been there before. But this was a very, very long journey, something I don't really recommend doing on console, even though I did it on console because I'm freaking crazy, maybe. But it's just going to take a long time, and eventually as you make your way out here, the textures really start to go wild. But as you can see, Crescent Valley really goes on for forever. So I know Fallout New Vegas was created with real-world map data, so I'm sure that plays an impact on why the world looks like that. I'm sure this world is very, very roughly similar to what we can find in real life. But speeding this up very fast, we can go to this southern edge of the map, and of course, like every other edge of the map in Fallout New Vegas, here you will find the endless ocean. If you jump in and decide to swim, you will swim for eternity, well, until you die of radiation poisoning. Thankfully though, if you do fall off, you can return, just swim into the land and you'll be teleported all the way back to the top. Now after this, I found this mountain off in the distance, which I'm going to call King's Mountain, just because it was so freaking large and it looked so freaking cool from far away. I think out of all the mountains I explored while outside of the Mojave, I think this one was the most interesting, so let's talk about it. It is a huge, monstrous mountain. It is very tall, and it is almost impossible to climb. In fact, I couldn't reach the very top. If you want to try in the future, please be my guest. But as I climbed up the mountain, I found some pretty interesting like little flat areas along the mountain and just these like little crevices and stuff like that. It is incredibly detailed for, being something players are not supposed to be at. But like I said, eventually as you get near the top, it just gets way too steep to try and climb up. I don't even think reload dashing would help you at all. So unless you were on PC, unfortunately, I don't think it's possible to climb up, but you can get awfully close. And I did try and try, but I failed. Now this mountain is pretty much directly west of the Mesquite Mountains crater, as you can see here, King's Mountain on the map, just kind of west of that little arrow thing in the bottom left of the map. I don't actually know what that is for, I'm not a cartographer, but even though if I claim to be. Anyways, after that I decided to make my way north up towards Good Springs. Now, there really is not a whole lot of interest until we get kind of closer to the canyon Wreckage. But eventually, as you come up over this hill, you're going to find something pretty remarkable. You find this huge freaking valley, and it's pretty freaking scary and intimidating. And I think this actually might be the Divide. You can just kind of see this huge canyon right here. I don't know if in real life the Divide is further away, but it's just a very unique physical feature within the game. So for the time being, I just labeled it the Divide on the world map, just because it's so freaking massive. Don't really know if this is where Lonesome Road takes place, but if it does, well, hey, it's pretty freaking cool. Now, if you actually go up to the canyon Wreckage where you enter Lonesome Road, you're just going to find a bunch of random junk laying around. Do save if you approach, because you could easily glitch out of the map. If you get too far away or too close to the actual map, it'll actually teleport you into the world like it does here. Don't know why it does that, or why it's programmed like that, but yeah, so make sure you save. I highly recommend always saving, because you never know when you're going to get stuck or something weird's going to happen. Now, continuing up towards Good Springs, we can find what I call the Lonesome Bush. I have no idea why Obsidian thought to put a bush here in the middle of no man's land, in the middle of nowhere, directly west of Good Springs, but this little small bush is here. Up on the cliff there, we can see some more bushes, which is probably how this bush got over here, but I just thought it's kind of cute and also kind of scary. But yeah, literally directly west of Good Springs, and we can find the Lonesome Bush. Again, it's kind of scary. I don't know why. It's just very intimidating to me, but there it is on the world map. Now the next location, which is this really large mountain that you can see now in the middle of the screen, but it's really far away, but I just thought, hey, I'd go check it out because I thought it looked pretty cool. It looked very intimidating from so far away. So I decided to make my way over there, and I decided to name this mountain Thunderbird Mountain. Why? I just kind of thought the peaks looked like a bird, but besides that, there's really no reason. Anyways, this mountain is very large, and I do think if you were using reload dash, you might be able to get to the top of it. Of course, the texture is glitching out over here. The tip of that smaller mountain looks really weird from far away. At first, I thought there was like a house or something up there, and I was really going down a Dr. Bosch road. Thankfully, nothing like that happened. But eventually, I kind of got stopped as I was making my way up. But if you just keep trying, you can keep climbing. Also, I was just admiring the mountains really far away. But yeah, if you really want to get up here, I think it could be possible. Unfortunately, as I was climbing, I fell off and I died as I was trying to do a reload dash. But hey, you can't have everything in life, as you can see here. Now I just want to point out on the map, here it is. It's right where that like compass is on the map, right at the end of the divide. Now the next place I wanted to show was the Red Rock Canyon Pass, because Red Rock Canyon Pass, if you don't know, connects Red Rock Canyon to Jacobstown. Now this pass though is kind of difficult to get to from Red Rock Canyon, but if you're coming from Jacobstown, it's very accessible, very easy. But there's this little area in the middle then that is inaccessible, right? It's kind of still outside of the map. However, we have to kind of jump this gap in order to get from, well, our part of outside the map over to the inner part that is outside of the map. If that made any sense, I hope so. Anyways, I tried reload dashing from kind of low, and I just got stuck. I couldn't move at all. Again, this is why you save frequently. That way you can avoid this situation. But I made my way higher up the mountain, and I figured maybe the invisible barrier does not go up so high, and I was correct. Now, also up here, there's all of these trees and stuff. Again, this is Red Rock Pass. It's supposed to give the feeling that you're entering Jacobstown from Red Rock Canyon. But doing reload dash up here, and I was able to fly across the ridge, and then right before hitting the ground, we save, because that will break our momentum, and when we reload, we will, well, be alive. And with that, we were officially in this kind of middle area that is outside of the map. I've never been to this area before, so I was kind of curious to see what it is. But yeah, it's just a very elevated area that is otherwise inaccessible in normal playthroughs. You get a really amazing view of Red Rock Canyon and the drug lab beneath us. And then, of course, if we make our way over, we can find Ranger Station Foxtrot and then New Vegas itself. It's pretty cool up here, I have to say. I really enjoyed it, kind of just exploring around, and also getting this absolutely immaculate view of the Mojave Wasteland from way up here. It was pretty freaking cool, but an area that I'm sure most players have never been to in their existence, so it felt pretty cool just to explore and find out, yes, it is accessible. So I just named this area the Great Plateau, because it's kind of isolated and there's no other way to it, so there we go. Now after this, I decided to make my way towards Jacobstown. Now Jacobstown is near Mount Charleston. That's also why you have the location Charleston Cave. However, in-game, normally, you're not allowed to go to the very top of the mountain. There's an invisible barrier that prevents you from getting this high. You can get really close, but just not quite there. But since we're outside of the map, we can climb to the top of Mount Charleston. Mount Charleston's pretty huge. I don't know which peak specifically is Mount Charleston, or if they're all Mount Charleston. But yeah, you can kind of walk around this crater. You can get some really good views of Jacobstown and the Mojave. And of course, you can get some very good views of Null. But yeah, just a really cool feeling being up here, because it's snowy, so it feels cold, unlike the rest of the Mojave that just feels hot and dry and, well, terrible. Anyways, there it is on the world map. Then, as I made my way down, I decided that I would head to the Highway 95 north ending. Now, in-game, there's a crater that marks the ending of Highway 95, but of course, now we can go to the other side of the crater. So here is Highway 95, of course, and there is the crater. Now, these trucks and stuff you can get inside, but there's really nothing in them of interest, and there's also this little trailer. We can get inside of it, but yeah, there's nothing inside of it. But just kind of cool. Now, I did want to mention Highway 95 ends very quickly in front of these rocks, and then we have all of these rocks out here in this field, and it is really rocky indeed. I'm assuming that Obsidian did that just to kind of make it look more natural and less just like copy and paste for people looking out. Not really sure why this rock field is here, but I decided to name it Rocky Field. So, for future reference, this is what it is. But yeah, just a huge field filled with rocks. There's really nothing exciting going out there. But there's the northern end of Highway 95, the crater, and Rocky Field on the world map. Now, my next stop after this was to find the alien UFO. Now, the UFO is only viewable if you're using the Wild Wasteland perk. So if you don't have Wild Wasteland, the UFO will not be here. Now, in a normal playthrough, there would be aliens beneath you, but I already killed those aliens, but they would drop the alien blaster, which is pretty good. Here you can see it on the map, and on this map, the aliens UFO. You can actually get on top of the UFO pretty easily by reload dashing, so feel free to try and drive it, but unfortunately we can't. Now after this, I wanted to talk about this, which I'm going to call the spine. As I was making my way down, I noticed this very large mountain in the middle of the Mojave, so I decided to call it the spine. And this mountain is actually quite easy to access. You just have to climb it, and climbing it is really easy. You don't even need a reload dash, which is quite nice. So as I made my way up, reload dashing just to make things go faster, I found this absolutely beautiful sunset at the top. I had a really good view of Rocky Field, Mount Charleston in the back, and then the sun setting way off in the distance. I just really love this view. It's been one of my favorite experiences so far outside of the map. Now, then to the south, of course, you can get a pretty big view of New Vegas and the rest of the Mojave. Of course, we are very far north, much further north than the game ever intended us to go, so you can kind of just see everything, and it's a kind of cool perspective. And here you can see the spine on the world map directly north of the thorn, so pretty easy to find. And here it is on the world map that I'm kind of throwing together in like a paint app. But anyways, after that, I decided to make my way towards the end of Interstate 15, the northern end. Of course, at this point now, we visited the southern end of Interstate 15. The northern end is much further outside of the map. As you can see, it is here. This abruptly ends, and unfortunately, the texture has no hit detection, which is kind of sucky, but yeah, it makes sense. You're never intended to be out here. This is purely a texture for people inside of Nellis Air Force Base, because you can actually see Interstate 15 from inside of Nellis Air Force Base for pretty far, just because of how the developers built Nellis way out in that kind of open field. Here is Interstate 15 from Nellis Air Force Base, so of course the developers had to kind of build it much further out than any other road in the game, which is why it actually ends off of the map itself, which I think is pretty freaking cool. Now after this, I wanted to venture to one of the most interesting locations outside of the Mojave. If you go north all the way to the northern edge of the map, which is a pretty long walk, but eventually you will get to the edge where you have the never-ending sea. You kind of get to this part in the map where there's a large depression, and this is kind of weird, thinking like, why is this depression here? Why does it just go down all of a sudden? And if you walk to the edge, eventually you will find this platform. And this platform is pretty small, and it extends over the never-ending sea. Now, there's a lot of theories online about the purpose of this platform, such as teleporting NPCs during certain events, or maybe used for testing, or maybe it has something to do with honest hearts. Who knows? But yeah, this platform is way out here, and it is a bit difficult to find because it only loads when you're next to it. So I have to credit this finding to Chungus666, who's been a big fan of my channel now for a long time, and he is the one that told me about it. So because of that, I'm going to name this platform Chungus's Platform. I think it's a pretty cool name. But on the platform, you're perfectly able to walk around on it and stuff like that. Now, if you want to get back up, you simply just walk into the wall and you will teleport back up. Except for the very middle, there's this triangle-shaped texture that has hit detection for whatever reason. I do not know why it's here. I do not know what purpose this would ever have served in the creation of the game. But hey, it's out here. If you have any theories, please drop them in the comments section below. As you can see, Chungus's Platform is really far north. It is directly north of New Vegas Clinic and Mole Rat Ranch if you want to check it out for yourself. After that, we can head over to Nellis Air Force Base, and at Nellis Air Force Base, we can find a very large open area immediately surrounding the base on the outside. We can also find these warning signs that are normally not viewable from inside. Of course, you can see the back side of the sign, but not the front side of the sign. So I named it Nellis Field, just because, yeah, that's an easy name for it. Now, after that, we find these power lines, which again have to extend quite far, because the player can view the power lines from inside Nellis, and they will extend for a really long time, just to give that kind of feeling of realism. And, you know, Obsidian cared about their game. Now, if you follow the pylons as far as possible, eventually they do, of course, end, and they just abruptly end. But of course, at this point, we're out of view of Nellis Air Force Base. Again, it is just off the map, so that is pretty cool as well, just like Interstate 15. Also, it's worth noting, Lake Mead extends all the way up here, and in real life, Lake Mead goes pretty far north as well. and it is in New Vegas as well. However, there is no visible water inside of it, so I thought that was kind of funny. And then here is the line marking the power pylons. And while I was way out here in the middle of nowhere, I found these kind of identical peaks just in this mountain, this very large mountain. So I decided to make my way over here and see what it looks like. And I decided to call it Dueling Peaks, just because, well, that's the most mature version I could think of. But anyways, I made my way up this mountain and tried to get to the mountain itself. However, I was unable to actually get to the top because it is just way too steep as you get near the top. But yeah, you can get some pretty good views of, well, nothing, of null. But yeah, I thought it was pretty cool, so I decided to mark it. But man, this mountain is steep as hell. I don't know why it's like that, but dang, that is crazy. Also, I had a really difficult time marking it because it's so far out of the map, I couldn't even see my pointer. But it is near the never-ending ocean, so yeah, it's way out there. Now, going back, we will want to follow these power lines again, because if you follow these power lines, we can find one of the most interesting things outside of the Mojave, and that is the Nellis Crater. Many players assume this is the location of a nuclear detonation. Of course, New Vegas was mostly spared from nuclear fire, but 8 nuclear bombs got through according to Mr. House, and many people believe this is the location of one of those bombs. It is near Nellis Air Force Base, and it is near the train tunnel, so it might make sense why the Chinese would make this area a target, and just a very large hole, and we'll put it here. Normally it is inaccessible because, yeah, it's outside of the map, but yeah, we can take a look at it. After that, I decided to head on over to Lake Mead and to get to the other side of the Colorado River. Now, as I was going over here, I wanted to revisit a location from before, and this is what I call Magical Ridge. This rock formation is very interesting because we can see through it on one end, but it does have a hit barrier. So, like, we cannot, like, go through it or swim through it. So, yeah, there it is. Just something I think is interesting. Anyways, after that, we crossed Lake Mead, and immediately we found the next crater, which is just called Lake Mead Crater. Again, many players think this is the site of a nuclear detonation. Again, very similar to Nellis Crater, and is right on the other side of Lake Mead, directly across from the Devil's Throat. So there it is on the world map that we are putting together here. After that, we really want to go check out Caesar's Legion and the fort, so we have to make our way kind of down south a bit, and then we will cross Lake Mead once again. Now, the big point of interest at the fort is this small Legion camp, well, not really small, this rather large Legion camp near Lake Mead, and I assume this is where maybe you would get off the boat, maybe, but it is above Hoover Dam on Lake Mead. Not sure. Anyways, there is this camp, and this camp is visible from within the fort. It just kind of gives the impression that perhaps Caesar's Legion is much larger than just the fort. But all of these tents and stuff have no hit detection, except for these like little fires, and you can actually hear the fire burning, but obviously we cannot see the fire. But there are dozens upon dozens upon dozens of tents out here, but there's nothing special inside any of them. And then from inside the fort, you can see all of these tents way off in the distance, so it's just pretty cool to be able to see them. So I just marked it as Legion Outside Camp on the world map. Now after that, we can make our way to Legate's camp. Now, Legate Lanius's camp is normally inaccessible until the very end of the game, during the end game, during the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. However, it is possible to access the camp. From this little peninsula or ledge that I just shot with my sniper rifle, we can actually discover Legate's camp as a location and then fast travel to there. Also from up here, you get a really good shot of all of the Legion soldiers within the camp. So if you want some free XP every few days, these guys do respawn. This is a great place to do it because you can just use your anti-material rifle with explosive rounds. So yeah. Anyways, I just named it Discovery Ridge. It is directly southeast of Legate's camp. Again, if you go on this ledge to the very edge of it, you will discover Legate's camp, and you can fast travel there whenever you want. After that, I decided to just go ahead and check out Hoover Dam real quick. There are a lot of invisible barriers around Hoover Dam, and you might hit some really weird loading screens and hear some really weird sound effects like the bomber flying over you. But besides that, it's pretty normal. It's just the other half of Hoover Dam, again, that is normally inaccessible until the end game. So I just put Hoover Dam end game to mark this location on our map. Now, I'll be honest, the eastern part on the outside of the map is really boring, and unfortunately, Obsidian wanted to develop this part of the map a lot more, adding more locations, but it just never came to fruition because the game was rushed. They only had a little over a year to finish the game. So there's really nothing over here. The biggest thing of interest is the Colorado River and Black Canyon itself. It does not follow the Colorado River like it does in real life, so I don't know why it was designed like this, but it snakes really far to the southeast towards the end of the world, towards the edge of the map, and it just abruptly ends. So yeah, I don't know why it's like this, but yeah, you can jump down there and go swimming. Good luck getting out. Make sure you save before you go down there. But yeah, it's just a really large canyon, and not sure why it's here. It is a bit difficult to get down here. I had some kind of funny deaths just because of the way the falling animation was working on these really steep cliffs or ledges. But if you run and jump, you can just barely land in the water and be safe. So there you have it. But I decided to call this, because I couldn't think of any other names for it, I decided to call it Eel Canyon because it kind of looks like an eel there at the bottom of the map, coming out of its hole. I don't know, just what I came up with, but there it is. It is so long, and it's nearly down at the bottom of the map. Next main area of interest is Searchlight Airport. Now, you can obviously access majority of Searchlight Airport in map, but there is a section of it that is outside, like that other half of the tunnel and the entrance to the actual airport and the parking lot. And yeah, you can't help but wonder if Obsidian had bigger plans for this airport, given that like it has a lot of detail on it, but maybe, you know, just didn't have time. After that, we can actually follow Highway 95 pretty far south for a distant amount of time before it abruptly ends, and then it's just rocks after that. Again, we're outside of the map, and it goes really far south, kind of like Interstate 15, I suspect just because the player can look really far down the road from Searchlight Airport. So there are those two locations marked. After this is when I noticed my mistake with Morningstar Exit and Crescent Valley. They should be moved further to the west on my final map. It's kind of a shame, but hey, it's not that big of a deal. And after that, I wanted to show off one last thing, and that is the nuclear craters at the old nuclear test site. At the old nuclear test site, there are several of these craters that are normally inaccessible, but they kind of just look like the craters when you blow up Megaton in Fallout 3, and in fact, I'm pretty sure they just reused a lot of those assets from a destroyed Megaton in Fallout 3. Now, the shacks out here do have hit detection, but we cannot enter them, which is kind of a shame. And if you get too close to the old nuclear test site, like the actual one in the world map, then you'll get radiation. And finally, the last thing, sorry, that last one was not the last. The last thing we're going to talk about is this bridge. This bridge is supposed to go over Crescent Canyon, but it has since collapsed from, well, you probably know, just wear and tear. But this bridge is actually supposed to be for a train, but we can see that Obsidian did not add the train tracks on top of the bridge, unlike the side that is actually inside of the playable world has train tracks on top of it. You can see it over there with the train car. But this bridge does have a hit barrier. We can stand on top of the bridge, and you can fall into the canyon like I'm about to do. So just kind of cool that it actually has hit detection, but besides that, it has no actual purpose. But there it is, collapsed train bridge. And there you guys freaking have it. This video took very long to make, but I am pretty proud of the final product. I had a ton of fun exploring outside of the playable area, finding different and interesting land formations, and then marking them on a map that I made. I felt like I was a kid exploring a world that I've never seen before, but it feels oddly like home. It is Fallout New Vegas, one of my favorite games of all time, and I really enjoyed exploring the entire map. And then here is the final product. Obviously, this is kind of a messy map, but it's everything that I could find. Now, if you guys know of other interesting locations outside of the playable area, please let me know in the comment section below. And if I think it's worthy of a note or something, I might make an individual video about that location. So if you know anything, if you like exploring outside of the map, please let me know. If you have any theories about some of these locations, about why they're there, or anything like that, again, please feel free to leave a comment and give your opinion, or if you have any actual information, that would be awesome too. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. This was the 250th episode of the Unexplored Mojave. This has been an incredible journey making these videos and being on this ride with you guys. Now, there might be a handful more of Unexplored Mojave videos to come out in the future, but I think it is kind of sad to say this will be one of the last episodes of the Unexplored Mojave. But don't worry, I still have a lot of plans with Fallout New Vegas and other videos, other series to do and to start. So please just relax and enjoy my other Fallout and Elder Scrolls content for the time being. Again, thank you guys so much for all of the support over the last year. This has been an incredible journey with all of you, and I hope it continues. This video is kind of a tribute to what made my channel successful early on, exploring outside of the map. Thank you guys so much for all of the support. If you have any ideas or recommendations for future videos, future ideas, please post them in the comment section below. Please leave a comment, please leave a like. Subscribing is always so helpful for the channel. Thank you guys so much for everything, and as always, until next time.